We'll move on, Pete, and we can talk about Everton because we know that Tim Iroegbunam is on the move from Aston Villa to Everton. Can you give us an update on that deal, please? And are Everton viewing this as one for the future, or are we expecting him to start immediately at Goodison Park?
Yeah, obviously, Everton have made this move. It sort of went under the radar that they've agreed this deal for Tim Iroegbunam. Obviously, we did the story on Football Insider that a deal had been agreed for around £10 million for the young midfielder. My understanding is that the deal could be completed by the end of this week. He's at Everton's training ground having his medical today. So if that all goes well, he should be a new Everton player by at least the weekend, I would have thought as well. Very highly rated young player, obviously come through the ranks at Aston Villa and broke into the first team in the last couple of seasons, but then found first team opportunities hard to come by under Unai Emery last season when Villa were chasing that Champions League place. So he found himself sort of down the pecking order at Villa Park. So I think Everton have been made aware of him. Obviously, we know Villa probably need to sell players for PSR regulations, and they've obviously gone ahead and decided to sell Iroegbunam. So I think for both clubs, it makes sense. It's a good deal. He's definitely one for the future, but I think he could be somebody for the present as well. And I think Everton are going to need new faces and energy in that midfield engine room, because we fully expect Andrea Onana to move on probably after the Euros. There's been a lot of interest in him. The talk of Arsenal, Bayern Munich and PSG all waiting in the wings to try and sign the Belgian international, and I think he's the player that Everton are willing to sacrifice to sort of help them comply with PSR regulations when they do look to balance the books before June 30th. So I think bringing in a young player with huge potential like Iroegbunam is a good deal for Everton, and they'll be hoping that he can come in and improve by working under Sean Dyche. And for £10 million, signing a top young English talent looks like good value to me.
Come back to that point, Pete, that you mentioned about Onana. What sort of valuation did the club place on him? And actually, where could he be headed this summer if he is to leave Goodison Park?
Yeah, I think they did spend close to 30 million on him when they signed him from Lille, so they will be looking at a big profit on that. Obviously, he's in the shop window right now at the Euros with Belgium. He had a decent game the other night, and although they did lose to Slovakia, but if he was to go to the Euros and have a really good tournament and Belgium go deep into that competition as well, it's only going to increase his price tag. So I think you're looking around 45, 50 million pound mark for somebody like Onana. Very young player as well. We've got to remember, I think he's got huge potential. If he went to a big club, I think you'll see the player just get better and better as well, playing at the highest level. So he's got all the attributes to be a top midfield player as well. And Arsenal have looked at him previously. They are meant to be maybe casting an eye over him again. Bayern Munich are very much interested in the midfielder as well, and PSG would love to bring him back to France as well. So I think there'll be plenty of takers for Onana. It all depends on Everton's asking price, and if they do have to sell him, it maybe will help them keep the likes of Jared Brandtwaite rather than having to sell him to Manchester United this summer, if they can have a big name exit and bring in that money to balance the books at Goodison Park.
And from a takeover point of view, Pete, can you give us an update on that, please, and what's happening at Goodison Park right now? Are we expecting Dan Friedkin's deal to go through over the next few, say, days and weeks?
Yeah, it's looking a lot more positive for Everton on the takeover front. As you mentioned, Dan Friedkin, the American, has agreed a deal in principle to buy Farhad Moshiri's majority stake in the club. Still a long way to go before the deal is done, but it looks like Moshiri has granted him exclusivity to sort of look at the books and get the deal in place to begin the purchase of his 94% stake in Everton. Obviously, there'll be other things that have to be ratified. There will be the Premier League owners and directors test plus regulatory approvals as well. But it definitely won't take as long as that 7-7 partners deal, which dragged on. It was like a soap opera in the end. But yeah, I just think it's good news for Everton. Friedkin, obviously a very successful and wealthy businessman. He's obviously been involved in football as well. He owns the Italian side Roma as well, and has an estimated net worth of 6.1 billion. So he's not shy of a few quid. So yeah, that's got to be positive news for Everton all round, because they've just been tossed from pillar to post recently with everything that's been going on over the ownership issue with Moshiri and 7-7 partners. So Friedkin, I think, heard a lot of positive things about him, and obviously he's done a decent job at Roma, who obviously attracted the likes of Jose Mourinho to the club when he was there as well, and obviously they went and won the Europa Conference League under his stewardship as well. So for Everton, things are looking brighter, and they'll just be glad when this takeover is finally done, and hopefully they'll have a new custodian in place who can take the club forward, especially moving into that new impressive stadium on Bramley Moor Dock.
Paul, what do you think it means for the club going into the summer transfer window, and will it have any great effect potentially on their potential signings there to make?
Yeah, of course it will. I mean, somebody coming into the club with that amount of wealth and investment that's willing to put it into the club. The thing for me, from an Everton point of view, is just makes you wonder how long that they've, for want of a better phrase, been messing around with this 7-7 partnership. You know, they've obviously signed NDAs and exclusivity deals and try and get that takeover done. But you look at the last 12 months, however long it's been, 6-12 months, that they've been throwing this deal backwards and forwards, and have given them the exclusivity and the option to buy the club, the first option to buy the club. There's obviously people with a lot more money and with a lot more better intention that have been waiting in the wings to buy the club. So somebody like this, it's huge for the club. Obviously, the transfer funds will be available to them now in the summer if the takeover is done. And it just, for once, there just seems to be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for Everton and Everton fans. So whether players obviously have to go to balance the books for PSR and FFP rules, that, you know, that just because they've got a wealthy owner, we've seen with Newcastle, we've seen with Nottingham Forest, you're not exempt from the rules. You can't just go and buy your way, you know, and players, etc. But debts can be settled, debts can be paid off, and the club can be put on a sound footing. And all of a sudden, with somebody like that coming into the club, there does look to be a big ray of light at the end of the tunnel, and a way out of this for Everton. And hopefully for Everton fans and the team, they're not going to be scratching and scraping around at the bottom of the Premier League again for another season.
Picking up on that point, Pete, how long are we expecting it to take to get ratified? Could it be done in the next few weeks and months? Is it likely to be done before the end of the summer transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's a good possibility. It could get done before the end of the window. As I said, when you're dealing with major financial deals, I guess, that don't happen just overnight. There'll be a lot of checks and tests going on, and obviously proof of funds and everything else. But yeah, I think there's a willingness from both parties to try and get this deal done. Farhad Moshiri wants out of Everton, and Dan Friedkin is ready to put the money into the club as well. So yeah, I would say it's a matter of weeks rather than months, and that can only be good news for Everton. And if they can get everything done and ratified before the end of the transfer window, maybe that will allow Sean Dyche and the recruitment team a bit of a better budget to maybe go and make some signings in the window, rather than trying to hold on to the best players and fend off bids from other clubs for those players. If they come in with the new ownership and there's a bit more stability around Everton, then it means they can maybe keep hold of their best players and move forward by making signings of their own.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.